Hey everyone, Ben Bennett here, host of the Resolution Podcast. Hey, I recently had an amazing Instagram live conversation with my friend Joshua Broome, who spent years in the adult film industry and then got out of it, became a Christian, started following Jesus, and is now a pastor. He shares just about his story and how God delivered him from that. And in this conversation, I also get into my story, how I got addicted to pornography, what kept me stuck in that, and then the proven principles that God used to bring lasting freedom and healing to my life. I've been free from pornography for 9 years. So we get into all of that and more in this conversation. So let's go ahead and jump into it. Hey everyone, thanks for joining this conversation. It's going to be awesome. My friend Joshua Broome and I are having a conversation about freedom from pornography. Joshua is going to be sharing about his experience in the porn industry and what that experience was like and how eventually he found freedom and got out of that, and how he's a pastor now and doing awesome things. We're going to be talking about that. I'll be sharing my story, just how I got addicted to pornography and the grip that it had on my life despite trying so many different things to find freedom. I'll be sharing about that. We'll be talking about all kinds of awesome things. A common question is pornography just something that I keep going back to because I'm a bad person, because I don't have enough self-control, or is it something more? Is there a deeper why behind our experiences of addiction to pornography? Are there deeper issues that draw us into pornography and keep us stuck and all of that? So Joshua is joining right now. Here we go. Awesome conversation as we get going, talking about freedom from pornography, talking about his story, talking about my story. Hey, there you are.
How are you?
Good, man. How are you?
I'm good. It's like no matter what platform it is, the lighting looks different on every. Anyway, I'm good. I'm good. I normally go to the gym super early in the morning, but I went tonight, and then I somewhat forgot that I was like, okay, I committed to do 30 days of prayer on a different platform. And I was like, oh, I got to do that. So just I'm live in the parking lot, and it's like getting dark, but it's like, hey, consistency trumps most things. But luckily I had contacts along with consistency. But anyway, man, it's so good to connect with you. And I'm telling you, so 2 weeks I'll be in Dallas. We're going to have a meal. We're going to hang out in person. It's going to be amazing. But thank you so much for being the catalyst for this. This is going to be great.
Oh, yeah. I've been looking forward to it for a while, and I think it's going to help so many people. And so why don't we go ahead and hop in? I know there's people from your page. There's people from my page. Maybe how about you just kind of share a little bit about yourself and what you do for the people on my page who aren't familiar yet?
Yeah. So long story, really short. I'll start today and then work my way backwards. I am a pastor. I've been married for almost 6 years. In July will be 6 years that we've been married, and we have 3 chaotic boys that are just, as they get older, they just become one tornado of chaos. But it's amazing. It's beautiful. But I didn't think I would be anyone that had any value or contributed in any capacity. Definitely not a father. Definitely not a husband, because of the life that I lived prior to that. Mm-hmm. So I was in the adult film industry for 6 years, from 2006 to the end of 2012. Some of the stuff that I was doing went into the early 2013, but I was in the adult film industry, and I did over 1,000 films, and I had a lot of success from the outside looking in. So I won a bunch of awards. I had a lot of monetary things, which you would think that would bring someone joy and happiness, and I definitely thought that. And then in 2012, I won Male Performer of the Year, and someone that has a very high achiever personality. I thought that, that would be the feather in my cap, the validation that I needed to feel good about myself. But it actually was the thing that broke me because it didn't work. The money didn't work. The fame didn't work. traveling the world didn't work. But I thought that award was going to be the thing. And when it didn't, the despair and depression that I was somewhat numb to, but starting to feel, it was amplified in a way that was so overwhelming that for about a 3 to 5 month period, I considered taking my life every day. And through a supernatural interaction with a person that said something so simplistic, just said my real name, it broke me out of this plausible reality that I'd created based on lies. And I ran home to my mom, but I ran from everything for 2 years. And then 2 years later, I had a radical encounter with the person of Jesus Christ through a person that invited me to come to know him in a place. Her name was Hope, and she's today my wife. So pretty amazing story of God pursuing me in the middle of my recklessness. But I can't wait to get into what all that looked like, both practically and spiritually.
Yeah, that's amazing. And I've heard your story many different times. And what always strikes me is how it was like you shared, like the night before or a couple nights before, you were supposed to go up and win this award for, like, what was it, male performer of the year. Tell us about that. That's just so powerful. It's because people have a perception of porn, and and I know it's not what people actually think it is. There's such a dark side to it and everything.
Yeah, and I mean there's a disconnect in that. For me, it was like I thought I was a really great basketball player, and I was in high school, but on the collegiate level, everyone was much better or as good as me. So I wasn't as good as I thought I was. And I think your presuppositions based on something, it kind of defines a reality for you. And I think when people see porn, they believe it's sex and they believe it's intimacy, and it's so far from that. And what I experienced was just time after time after time of me being stripped of my human dignity and feeling exposed. So when I get to that point where I won the award, it broke me because I was so sure that was going to be it. And when I found out that I won the award, I didn't even go to the award show. I found myself on my face, weeping, and just asking the God that I knew about but didn't know personally. I just want to die, because everything that I had done prior to that, everything around, everyone around me was saying, hey, this is just who you are now. So the only way to live your life is to continue to do porn, produce porn, or direct porn, because this is your life. You're not going to do anything else. You're stuck. This is who you are. This is who you are. I think one of the biggest lies that this culture tells themselves is, this is just who I am. And you allow something that happened to you or something that you did to define what you do next and how you see the world. And Jesus tells a very different story.
Yeah. Oh, it's so powerful. It's so interesting, the perceptions versus reality.
Yeah.
What the industry is actually like.
Yeah. I mean, it's so I like to compare it to, if you're someone who likes action films, think about any action film you've ever seen in any movie ever. You can't think that The Rock is jumping off of this building and tackling someone and falling through this table, and it just happened that way. Or your favorite fight scene. If you Inception is one of my favorite movies, and it's that elevator scene where they're back and forth from reality and this and that. You can't possibly think that was someone just turned on a camera and that happened. There's choreography, there's a director, there's editing, there's cuts, and there's two people there that are being paid to be there. And sure, they're under their own cognizance to a certain extent. Yes, they've signed a piece of paper saying, yes, I'm willing to do this, but that consent didn't last, because there's no residuals in porn. So once you do it, it's done, and you give away all rights. You have no rights to it whatsoever. You get paid once. That time, that's it. You are a day rate employee, and whatever happened on camera, whatever's recorded regarding audio, pictures, video, all of it, you're giving it away for a check one time. And so you kind of release your consent because man, there's nothing I would rather do than have all of that stripped away off the internet. And then many people ask me often, it's like, hey, do you get residuals for that? Do you still make money for that? No, and no. And 10 years ago, I was an idiot that wanted to die every day living in the middle of Hollywood. So I didn't have a 401k. I wasn't saving my money. I wasn't paying my taxes quarterly. So, but yeah, it's just so different because it's two people that have decided that they're okay with selling themselves for sex, and they become a product, and they see themselves as a product, and they value themselves based on their ability to sell themselves for sex. And when you compromise to that regard, it doesn't matter how much money you make. It doesn't matter how many people know who you are. It doesn't matter how many followers you have on social media. All those things are, aesthetics that look good. But when you lay your head down on the pillow, you know that you're a prostitute, and you know that you're not proud of who you are or what you're doing. And you're wrestling with that constantly. But unfortunately, people wrestle with that for so long that they either A, end up taking their life, or B, living a life believing that they're absolutely worthless and they can't do anything else. So they put on the mask that says, hey, I like what I'm doing. I like who I am. It's almost like someone that's in an abusive relationship and they're like, yeah, I'm happy. It's like, no, you're not. You believe that there's nothing else for you, and your only choice is to lie to yourself and say that I'm okay. And in the world where we are so slow, especially as men, we're so slow to say that I'm not okay. And everyone in that industry is not okay.
Yeah, it's wild. And especially thinking about, I've just read so many stories about people who feel stuck, they feel coerced, they feel, I know you've shared about how you got in the industry and some of the manipulation that happened and the preying that happens on people. Why do you think people end up staying in the industry, or why did you stay in the industry for so long?
Yeah, I mean, it was simple as I in my heart of hearts believe that there's no one that ever would want to be in a relationship with me. There's no value that I have that I can impact the world because of someone. So I ended up in the industry because the way that God had wired me, created me, and gifted me was to communicate and to create. And for me, I thought that was going to be acting. So I started acting and modeling when I was 14. I went to college for theater, and I was having some success in that. But there was a gap in my heart that that my personality it kind of combined with where I grew up without a father, and I thought that because he didn't want a relationship with me, he never really rejected me because my mom was 16 when she had me, but he lived in the same town. So I see this young man who is my father become a man, and I'm literally seeing him in the grocery store. And I know that he is my father, but he's never been my dad. And that made me feel some sort of way. And having the personality that I have, I thought that I had to earn my validation. I had to earn my worth. I had to earn my value through achievement. So I had to be the best, regardless of what it was. I had to be the best because that momentary satisfaction of achievement, it covered the wound. And that just got, it's almost like it was a dopamine effect where I just needed more and more and more. So I go out to LA and I have this identity struggle. And then I hear a counterfeit version of my dream. And I have this lack of belief in myself. So I say, I can be famous. I can make a lot of money. People will know my name. Well, at this point, I'm 22. I've been in this industry, for 8 years, and I haven't made it yet. So maybe I'm not good enough. Maybe this is as good as it's going to get. And that was a very large factor in my yes to do that first film. And then once I did that first film, to your question, why I stayed in that industry is because once I did that thing, that became my identity. And as I did that thing more and more, that proved to me, and it almost, in a contrary to Romans 12:2, what was renewing my mind was this false ideology of who I was based on my behavior, and everyone around me was telling me that's who you are, you're awesome, you're great, you're the man, whatever. But inside, all I wanted to do was impact people and matter. And I tried my best to believe that that was what I was doing, but I knew it was a lie.
Wow. Yeah, so profound. I think about how I got addicted to pornography when I was 12, 13, and I didn't know any of this about the industry or the pain stuff going on behind the scenes. When I was introduced to it, it was like, okay, here's this thing that is so alluring, enticing. These people are enjoying this. I got hooked around the age of 12 or 13. And for me, it was quickly a way of trying to find what I wasn't receiving in my life, like not receiving nurture growing up, being bullied by friends, not having people enter my world. And I didn't know it at the time, but pornography was something that I went to try and find love, but it could never love me back.
Yeah.
And it, what we know about the brain and dopamine and all of that, I quickly got hooked. Nothing could make me feel the way that pornography could make me feel. And I was a Christian at the time, young, 13, 14, 15.
Yeah.
And I knew it was wrong, but at the same time, I felt like it was keeping me alive.
Yeah.
And a way to cope with the pain, and tried so many ways to stop, promises to God to stop. But this felt like the one thing in my life that no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't get out of. And eventually it got so bad that I felt hopeless. I remember one time, this led throughout college. I remember one time just going back to it again and again and feeling so like, why don't I love God enough? Why can't I get it together? And assuming all these things were true, which actually weren't true. There's something deeper going on in my life. And I got to the point where I was just like, God can't set me free. I'm ready to almost walk away from this God that says he came to bring life and bring it abundantly, because I'm sane and I'm trying to stop and he's not setting me free. I'm so glad one of my mentors just encouraged me, just like when Jesus said to Simon Peter, or when Simon Peter said to Jesus, Lord, you have the words of eternal life. To whom else will we go? That kept me holding on.
Yeah.
But it was such a fight. I mean, now I've been free from porn for 9 years, almost 9 years this August.
Oh, wow.
After 10 years of an addiction and of just struggling over and over and feeling hopeless. I think that's one of the hardest things of the struggle, especially if you're a person following Jesus. It's like, on the one hand, I love Jesus with all my heart. I love people. I want, the best for myself and for others and want to honor God. And yet I keep coming back to this thing and I don't know why and I don't know how to get out. And I hear the voice of the enemy and the shame and all of that. So,
yeah, I think something that I talk about in a lot of the stuff that I do is the necessity for someone you can have a hot conversation with. So honest, open, and transparent. And like what you're saying, like that is what I needed to hear, because when I became a Christian, I think the biggest lie that anyone could ever portray is that when you give your life to Christ, all of your mess is just gone. Like, yes, salvation is instantaneous, but sanctification is a process. And for me, not just the, 6+ years of pornography. The, I've been promiscuous to a radical extent and done things that I'm in some ways even more ashamed of, leading up to that. So for me, the mental and emotional trauma that I was carrying into now knowing the person of Jesus, like, yes, my life was different. That person that I used to be was dead. 2 Corinthians 5:17, like that person was dead and I was made new. But this new person still had incorrect thought processes. I still had mental and emotional trauma that I needed to deal with. Um, and there were things that I needed to process through. And I just thank God that I had the people in my life that didn't just encourage me, that also like gave me a kick in the butt every once in a while, because I think that you need both. Like, there's another thing that I think that everyone needs is radical accountability. And what I mean by that is that someone that you can literally tell anything to, and there'll be enough relational equity where we can have an honest conversation, but your feedback to me is always going to be, constructive and critical, and sometimes it's going to hurt, because if you're always just encouraging me, you're not helping me. And I think like that's for me, it's like I needed to be corrected, but I also needed someone to extend, like, Colossians like 4:6. I needed their speech to be gracious, because I needed to build the trust to be able to confess, because I withheld confession for so long. So I had to build the trust so that I could confess, so that I could be corrected. So I think it's this, it's never like either or, it's always both. And then eventually I found someone that I loved and trusted enough to, go through this process of counseling and just digging into things. Like you were saying, it's like, it's so much bigger than why. It's why did you say yes? Like, what makes you say yes when you know that you should say no? And that's the struggle we have, like, as Christians, where yes, like John 19:30 is real, like tetelestai, it is finished. Yes, the sin has no hold on me, yet I still struggle with this. How can I be free from it? And it's through, those honest, open, transparent conversations with people that you love and you trust, and you're willing to kind of just pull back the curtain that is the filth of your heart and your mind, so that you can unpack it and process it. But Ben, I would love to know, anyone listening to this, and then myself personally, what advice would you give, or what would you say, like, what did the process, both spiritually and practically, look like for you, where you started truly making progress, getting free?
I think I started when I was 19. I started talking about just that I was struggling and sharing it, but it was always reactive. I think this is how most of us can kind of live, like reactively, like, oh, last week I looked at porn or masturbated or whatever, or drank too much or whatever the struggle
Yeah.
was. And so that was going on for several years. And it wasn't until I got involved in a in-depth recovery process with a certified sex addiction therapist who was a pastor, he was a therapist, and had this structure where I went through 4 years of one, every day I committed to a life of no secrets. And so I was with a couple other guys, and we would call each other, text each other, and talk about how we were doing. Because what we discovered in our own lives with the help of this pastor and therapist was that porn ultimately wasn't our problem, but it was our attempt at a solution to feel loved, to feel known, to not feel rejected, to cope with our pain in life. And so we started getting emotionally aware and saying, hey, today I'm feeling anxious. And I know if I don't deal with this, it's because of this challenge. If I don't deal with this, I'm soon going to be just starting to get angry, and then I'm going to want to cope. And so we started reaching out every day just to process the normal stress. And what we didn't know at the time, but what we discovered was we found what we were actually looking for. Because in pornography, so myself and so many of the guys that I was walking through life with, so many of us had wounds.
Yeah.
our parents may have done great in certain areas, but not great in other areas. And so there's this wound of either feeling not good enough or not having the support or them believing in us or just bullying throughout school growing up. We all have wounds in this fallen world. We don't live in the Garden of Eden. And so we started to realize that we had eroticized our wounds, meaning that we had sexualized unknowingly the painful parts of our life, and we were subconsciously reenacting those, trying to resolve them through pornography, through the types of pornography we're looking at, through the scenarios. For example, for me, why did I gravitate towards sexually aggressive women who would come after men in the scenarios? You start doing the work and realizing, oh my gosh, I didn't feel pursued growing up. I didn't feel like somebody was coming after me in love. This has been twisted and eroticized, and I keep trying to find it here, but I'm never going to find it because it was never meant to fulfill me. Only God's love through himself and other people to us that way. And so we started to find what we were actually looking for and didn't know we were looking for. And that started to heal our wounds over that 4-year process. And so for me, it came down to, and then I went on to lead, for 6 years, I led porn addiction recovery groups. And we saw hundreds of people get free. And so God did it through this lifestyle of no secrets, of what it really means to walk in the light with safe people. Two, figuring out the why. Proverbs 4:23 says, everything you do flows from your heart. And as Christians, a lot of the time we say, oh, well, I'm just a sinner. My heart is broken. So yeah, that's why I look at. No. Let's go deeper. What broken parts of your heart living in a fallen world that you're coping with and compensating with and trying to find in pornography? Once you discover that, you can figure out how to find that fulfilled with God and with safe people and with mentors who can actually give you what you're looking for. And another one, the big one for me, was having a resource that really helped me walk through all of these issues. And it peeled back. It was like, I feel like I no longer questioned these things. I understood how the process to get free, what God wanted to do in my life, what it looked like to really live in the power of the Holy Spirit, why I was doing the things I didn't want to do. And so having that resource, all of that just really, really helped me. And that's why I wrote this book. Free to Thrive. But it really helps people discover the why. Like, what am I looking for? Why do I do the things I don't want to do? And how can I actually find that through God or other people? And so those are three or four of the main things that God used in my life. And then I've seen now at this point work with thousands of people.
There's so much that you said that I can just relate to. But I think the overarching thing that I hear that is so helpful, and it actually allows me to put into words and articulate better something that I'm kind of just processing myself. But I get thousands of messages and DMs daily that saying exactly that. Josh, I am a Christian, yet I still struggle with pornography. How do I quit? And I think it's very quick to us to ourselves, right? To internalize things and think, am I, some of these people are like, am I a Christian? Because if I'm a Christian, like Galatians 5:22 says, some of the fruit of the Spirit is self-control. And I find myself struggling with self-control. Yet what I hear, it's not a lack of self-control. It's a lack of self-awareness. Because if I'm not self-aware of the things that are triggering me, that actually are embedded deep within my heart, that are overflowing through my behavior, because I'm trying to do something to mask the pain or cover up the shame or whatever it might be, it's so powerful. Thank you for sharing that. And for me, when I had a tremendous breakthrough, because for me, it was so. My journey is like weird to a certain degree, because like I go from being in porn And then, I had this 2-year period where I'm just kind of trying to figure out life and just running and hiding, lying to everyone. Like, I was lying about things that didn't even make sense. Like, I was lying about everything because I was so sure that who I was, which I didn't truly know, was no good, and like, it didn't offer any value. So I need to make something else up. And then I meet this person and I give my life to Christ. And then we go on this journey together that are both eager to know, God and to grow in our relationship with Jesus. So all of a sudden I go from being in porn to being in the desert to being engaged to going through this walk of celibacy. And I think what I would love for you to talk about, that's such a taboo thing, is, man, even though I was celibate, like, in that journey, my mind was not. My mind was still dark and thinking things that were not honoring of God, not honoring of the person that I was going to marry. And for me, the byproduct wasn't like masturbation or like watching porn. For me, it was, I would get tempted and I would be enraged with anger. Like, I was struggling with anger because I was so frustrated that I was like, okay, I've given my life to Jesus. Why am I still having these urges? Why can I not go to a gym and not look at something, like look at a girl and her be wearing something, and then that wrecked my entire day? Why every time I turn on the TV, is there something on TV, there's someone kissing or a sex scene or whatever, like a commercial, like a cologne or a fragrant commercial? All of a sudden it would trigger me and my mind would be in, a ditch for 2 or 3 days. And just like, for me, I was just so angry. But for some people, I say all that to say, more often than not, I found myself justifying my behavior. I was like, well, if I do this, that's better than this, right? So it's like, okay, if I spend 3 hours in the gym, then that'll show myself. If I spend, if I listen to the entire book of John every day on 2.5, where I'm not even like, getting anything, if I do these things, I can earn my validation or my worth with God, as long as I'm not doing this, and that's better. And for me, what I found myself is this spirit of, why am I always justifying? And then several years later, after being married for a while, I realized that for me, I had unrepented sin, and that the reason I stayed in the industry was, yes, the relationship with my father was one of the tributes that played a factor in me saying yes initially. But the reason I stayed in the industry was I chose to. I chose to do all 1,000 of those scenes. I chose to do everything that I did. No one was forcing me. I was yes, I was verbally coerced and manipulated, but I was the person doing most of the manipulation. So for me, I had to come to God and say, I repent of doing these things upon my own volition, because I had justified the 999 from the one. And when I truly repented to God, and we can dig into that, because there was spiritual warfare, and I feel like, that there was, I don't know, it was a lot. It was a lot going on. But for me, it was this justification of a behavior because I believe that one thing is better than another. So the most common thing that I hear that I would love for you to speak to is someone out there saying, I masturbate so I don't watch porn, or I watch porn so I don't cheat on my spouse. What advice would you say to that person that's thinking in that, I'm doing this so I don't do that?
I would take them to the words of Jesus when he says, if you look at a woman lustfully, you've committed adultery in your heart. And that's not a shaming thing, but it's
the truth. Yeah.
Almost like a liberating thing, because while the consequences of adultery are not the same as thinking or viewing somebody lustfully,
right?
It's like a liberating thing, because, okay, if Jesus is taking it there, then he has more for me. Then it must be possible, following this Jesus, to not be stuck with lustful thoughts for the rest of my life. Yeah, I'm not doing adultery or whatever porn anymore, but I'm still struggling with this. Oh, Jesus is talking about this. Well, I must be able to be free from this. And so that's kind of how I see it. And what I discovered in my journey was behaviors follow beliefs, or what we do follows what we start thinking about.
Yes.
And even research will show that thoughts and emotions are deeply tied together. So I realized, Joshua, early on that if I started to give into these thoughts and these fantasies, or to look and this and that, it was only a matter of time before I would go back to pornography. So as I got into recovery and healing, I said, a relapse for me is pornography, it's masturbation, and it's going there with my thoughts and dwelling on those. And so God gave me the strength and ability to cut off those thoughts. It made it so much easier. Another thing I would say is we need to, this is a big thing, because we don't want to just, like you were saying earlier, we were talking about, it's not a self-control issue, it's a self-awareness issue.
Yeah.
When I don't seek things out now, even on, Instagram, I don't go searching for whatever sketchy looking pictures or whatever.
Yeah.
But I find myself having the desire or the thought popping in my head, oh, what if I did do that?
Right.
Oh, something is going on in my life where I'm already feeling exhausted. Trauma's getting triggered, rejection. If that's coming up, I know my soul is not at this point in a good place, and I need to reach out, and I need to sit with God, and I need to process what I'm fearing with other people, and I need to connect rather than cope.
Yeah.
And so allow those triggers to lead to transformation in your life. Say, why do I keep thinking about that? Why do I want to think about that sexual scenario? Like we talked about earlier, it's not random. There's something you're trying to resolve in your mind with that scenario. Even if it's not sexual, I had a mentor who talked about, I fantasize a lot about going back to high school and crushing it in basketball and being everybody's hero. And for him, he realized that because I didn't feel good enough in high school. And he stopped having those thoughts when he realized, oh, that's what that's about. But this is who God says I am.
I think that really would speak to someone who is clinging on to who they used to be. And I think, it's like whatever idol that you built and started to worship, if that changed and went away, and now it's like, man, if I only could get back to that, then my life would be better, so I think that's so powerful to know that, man, a trigger is an opportunity to go to God. I think it was I Declare War, where Levi Lesko was talking about, like, thoughts are like trains, where you can choose to get on that train, but you know that train is going to take you somewhere. So if that thought is going to take you somewhere you don't want to go, don't get on that train, and then pivot to take every thought captive and make it obedient to Christ. But you need the self-awareness to know this thought is prompted by X, and it's going to take me here. And then I have to have the self-awareness to say, okay, Josh, I'm thinking about this. Why? Like, can I take a step back and say, why? And goodness, if I have someone in my life, if I can call Ben and say, man, this happened to me today, and I found myself thinking about something I haven't thought about in so long. Would you be willing just to, like, talk this out with me? And just again, good, like pastoring 101, it's like, it's not about providing answers. It's about asking good questions. And through having a conversation, if I can get to the root of the why that why that thought was even there, that is where we can start making progress.
Yes, and we have the freedom in Christ to do this. Romans 2, it's his kindness that leads us to repentance.
Yeah.
His condemnation. So if he already dealt with all my stuff on the cross and put it to death and defeated it and defeated the power of sin, why do I condemn myself every time I go back to it or have this thought or whatever? What if I could get his kindness in my life and let it flow through me and start being curious and like questioning this struggle and figure
Yeah.
out, call somebody up and be like, hey, maybe this is kind of weird, but I keep thinking about this specific sexual scenario and
Yeah.
you know my story really well. Can you help me figure out what this might
Yeah.
be, what I'm longing for and how God wants to bring healing to that through himself and other people here and now.
Yeah. And for me, like I had to do like pretty radical things. Like two things that I suggest people who are like, they feel that they like can't stop like masturbating, they can't stop watching porn. And like maybe like I think like if you live with someone, like that's a great opportunity to have an excuse not to do that, because all of a sudden you have to seek isolation. You have to intentionally isolate yourself. But what I always suggest, don't take your phone in your bedroom or your bathroom. And for me, a game changer for me, as strange as it sounds, a game changer for me was I not I like taking a shower. I had to use a loofah, not a washcloth, and I can't use my hand because I didn't want to touch myself. So like just having the discipline not to touch myself in any capacity, like that was a game changer for me, because if I could if I could not do that, that was like for me, like that would always be the trigger that led to me doing something I didn't want to do. So do you have any like practical things like that might would work for someone, or things that you did like that, or was it all a mental and emotional game for you?
It was both early on. I got to think back because it's been about 9 years. Like
Yeah.
the cool thing about how God designed our brains is it's not going to be this way forever. And so things that used to trigger me, like now I live alone in an apartment. I've got a computer. I've got whatever. If I wanted to look at porn whenever I wanted to, I could, but I
Yeah.
don't.
Yeah.
Renewed my mind. I'm not triggered to look at it anymore. And so what happened early on was I needed to cut the supply. If you're an alcoholic working in a bar, you don't want to also live upstairs.
Yeah. Yeah.
You got to make wise choices. Okay, for this amount of time. For me, early on, I got rid of my smartphone. I didn't have an iPhone or that kind of a smartphone for 5 years. I just
Yeah.
didn't trust myself with it. I waited till I was free from porn for 4 years before I got a smartphone again. So, I mean, that's hard to do these days, but there's great stuff like Covenant Eyes and
Yeah.
um, they can track everything. They use this thing called what's it called? Not screen time, but they can track everything you're watching, send it to a friend. If you live with other people, not taking, like you said, I used to leave my laptop, my phone out in public places. And I told my roommates, if you see it not there, you know what's up.
Yeah.
Something's going on. And then, so those things, but honestly, Joshua, what happened was as I limited access to it and
Yeah.
addressed the deeper issues, something started changing real quickly.
Yeah.
About 2 years in, where my desires changed and a lot of time had passed by to where I didn't meet those boundaries that I used to have because I wasn't getting triggered anymore. And we know about neuroplasticity,
Yeah.
moldable and changeable. And but I'm a big fan of being wise and setting those boundaries with.
Yeah.
Actually, I will say this. I still have Covenant Eyes on
Yeah.
all my devices, and I don't have the password to download apps on my phone. It's just a wisdom thing for me. I've been
Yeah.
from porn for 9 years. Yeah, I'm sure I could find a device and go find porn if I wanted to, but my mind has been, it's worth it. Yeah, it's kind of is a burden to go and ask my friend to put the password on, but I just, it's worth it to walk in
Yeah.
free.
Yeah, for sure. And I think in a lot of ways, what you'll see is something you believe that you could never do. It becomes more obtainable as you go along, because your desire for that thing, your appetite changes. Just like, a diet, like with sugar or caffeine. I mean, I consume more caffeine than any person should. but like for me, it's like, okay, if I'm going to do a detox, whether it be caffeine or sugar, like the first few days are really difficult, but your body will acclimate, your mind will acclimate, and then I will desire that less and less. And for me, like the same thing happened with porn, where or just sex in general. It just the more I starved that part of my life, the less I desired it. So for me, in addition to that, it's like I had to take inventory of every aspect of my life. Like, who am I following on social media? If you're someone who like get rid of your smartphone isn't a possibility, and maybe you did the covenant eyes. I'm sure Ben has a code. I have a code where you can use it for 30 days for free. But after 30 days it lapses, like maybe like you're super tight on your budget. We could talk about how money well spent, but you can just go to your screen time and limit access to adult sites. So all of a sudden you've taken inventory, and now you set a boundary. So now you're going to have to intentionally cross the boundary that you set to do the thing that you said that you didn't want to do. And if there's another layer of accountability where it's like, okay, I trust you and I'm going to tell you the truth. And each and every week, me and Ben are going to sit down like, hey, Josh, how are you doing emotionally? Like, how is your purity walk going? Like, what's going on in your life? And if I'm committed to telling you the truth, I'm going to tell you the truth. I'm like, hey, I did this thing I didn't want to do. And then how you respond is so important. Mm-hmm. Because like we were saying earlier, where it's like, if you condemn me, then I'm probably going to withhold that information from you in the future. But if you show me too much grace, I'm going to say, okay, it's not a big deal. But if you meet me in the middle with love, grace, and truth, then all of a sudden I'm going to feel conflicted, because I'm like, okay, you love me enough to tell me that, hey, I'm sorry that happened, but can we process why you chose to do that? Because you said that you didn't want to do that because it was impacting your life in a negative way. And that, I love pointing people, especially people who are in roles in ministry or desire to be in ministry, looking at 2 Timothy 2:20 through 26, just talking about how the effectiveness of our ministry will be impacted by our level of purity, and how if we want to be a vessel which God can work through in a powerful way, and God will do anything at any time, but he can work through us best when we have a pure heart and a pure mind. And that's important. So just having that conversation is like, hey man, you said you didn't want to do that. Let's talk about why you did it, because you said that this was impacting your life in a negative way and you didn't want to do it. Let's address the truth. I love you, so I'm saying that. So that conversation is so much different than you idiot or no big deal. Like, it's got to be somewhere in the middle.
Yeah. Yeah, that's so good. Especially when you almost like covenant together to say, hey, we want to live out truth and grace, and I want to stop doing this. Will you help me? I'm so honest with you, but will you give me encouragement and truth?
Spur each other along, not pat each other on the back along, but spur. It's got to be abrasive to a certain degree, because without stress, there can't be change.
Hey, we know all about spurs down here in Texas.
There we go. We go.
Well, I know we talked about 30 minutes, but this was so good. We just kept on going.
I mean, anybody that knows me is like, you got to strangle me to shut me up. So.
Well, this was awesome, Joshua. Thanks so much for chatting. Hopefully it was helpful.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And we'll definitely post it so that people can catch up on it if they missed it. And yeah, man, appreciate you. Love what you're doing, and look forward to connecting.
Absolutely, man. We've got to hang out, man. I think that there's so many things that we can do like this on a larger platform in a bigger way, and I think it's really going to bless people. And what I love is what I see happening within the realms of ministry. Amazing people like Tim that are linking arms together and understanding that it's not about me, it's about we. And when Jesus has called us to be a people of God, so that when they look at his people, they see a reflection of him and his character. So I think that digitally, God is doing this really unique thing that he's bringing people together so that as a community of people who are called to make a difference for the kingdom, which we all are, but I just think that he's doing something really neat in community. And I think that there's people like us that have different stories, but so many similarities along the way that God is really going to repurpose, redeem, and reuse in a way to point back at the very thing that we struggled with.
Yes, so good, man. Yeah, love that. He's doing
All right,
it.
brother. All right,
All right,
have a
brother.
good one. All right.
Talk to you later.